A black waitress, just doing her job, gets fired for something that seemed pretty harmless, helping out one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, Brad Pitt. You'd think, okay, celebrities get special treatment all the time, but this one, it sparked something much bigger. What happened next, though, left everyone shocked and questioning everything. Brad Pitt didn't just sit back and let it go, he took action. So, why did he step in, and how did his involvement change everything for this waitress? Keep watching, because what he did next will have you rethinking everything you know about celebrity power and fairness. Think of it like this. You're working a regular shift at a trendy restaurant, doing what you've done 1,000 times before, waiting on customers, making sure everyone's glasses are full, the orders are right, and the atmosphere is just what it should be. Then, out of nowhere, in walks one of Hollywood's biggest stars, Brad Pitt. No big deal, right? Just another celebrity popping in for a meal. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. The waitress in question wasn't just another server. She was someone who took pride in her work, who had built a reputation for going above and beyond to give people a memorable experience. When Brad Pitt sat down at her table, she wasn't starstruck. She treated him with the same professionalism and courtesy she'd give any other guest. There was no fawning, no extra attention, no over-the-top gestures. Just a simple, genuine act of kindness. Maybe she asked him if he was enjoying his meal, or perhaps she noticed something that needed attention, like an extra napkin or a drink refill. Whatever it was small, it was thoughtful, and it wasn't something you would think would lead to a firing. But it did. This wasn't just any ordinary act of service. There was something about the interaction that caused a ripple effect. Maybe it was because Brad Pitt was famous, and any interaction with a high-profile celebrity is bound to be scrutinized. Maybe the management at this upscale restaurant felt that the attention he was getting wasn't part of the script they had in mind for their staff. But whatever the reason, this waitress was fired after the incident. Why? Well, according to the restaurant, it was because of favoritism. She had treated him like anyone else, which in their eyes apparently wasn't good enough. The reasoning seemed pretty flimsy, but that's how the story went. Now imagine for a second how that must have felt for her. Here she was, just doing her job, making sure everyone had a good time, when out of nowhere she's suddenly in the middle of a drama that's way out of her control. It wasn't her fault she happened to serve Brad Pitt. It wasn't like she went out of her way to make him feel special or put other customers in a less than ideal position. She did her job. Nothing more, nothing less. But in the world of high-end service, sometimes being too good at your job can be a problem. Especially if it's a celebrity involved. The decision to fire her seemed a little harsh, right? It didn't seem to make much sense. And, of course, word of the firing spread fast. People started to question why she'd been punished for such a small, seemingly insignificant act of kindness. Why was she being held accountable for something that, in most cases, would be seen as just part of the job? Was it really about favoritism, or was there something else going on behind the scenes? It was hard not to think that race had played a role in how things unfolded. In a city like Hollywood, where race and celebrity culture are so intertwined, the firing quickly became a topic of conversation. The waitress was a black woman, and when you look at the larger picture, it starts to feel like her race played a role in the decision. It wasn't just about her doing her job. There were larger issues at play. Issues that a lot of people weren't talking about but couldn't ignore. In a high-profile restaurant where celebrities come and go, it's not unusual for staff to bend over backwards for them. But in this case, the waitress didn't. She didn't go out of her way to cater to him just because he was famous, so why was she the one who paid the price? I mean, think about it. There's this idea of celebrity entitlement, where fans and businesses alike cater to the whims of famous people. But this waitress wasn't playing by those rules. She treated Brad Pitt like a regular guy, not someone who could make or break a restaurant's reputation, and apparently that was a problem. It makes you wonder, was the restaurant really just concerned about favoritism, or was there something deeper at play? Now, we're not saying the entire situation was about race, but it's hard to ignore the fact that the way she was treated wasn't exactly fair. After all, when a person does their job well, they should be celebrated for it, not punished. And when the person on the receiving end of that kindness is Brad Pitt, a little recognition, or at the very least some understanding, might have been the better way to go. This whole ordeal could have easily ended there, with a fired waitress and an unanswered question. But, as you'll see, it didn't end there, because what Brad Pitt did next would leave everyone stunned. So, here we are, right after that dramatic moment when the waitress was fired. It could have ended there, right? She loses her job and life moves on. But it didn't. Something big was about to happen, and it was all thanks to Brad Pitt, the very same man who had sparked the whole chain of events in the first place. Remember, this wasn't just any regular celebrity sighting. Brad Pitt, one of the biggest stars in the world, was in the middle of this storm, and what he did next shocked everyone, leaving the public, the media, and even the restaurant itself trying to figure out what to make of it. Here's where the story gets interesting. Brad Pitt wasn't going to let this slide. You'd think that after being involved in something like this, he might just let it go. I mean, celebrities are busy people, right? They've got their lives to live, their projects to manage, and let's be honest, the last thing they need is to get wrapped up in a small issue involving a restaurant and an employee. But Brad Pitt wasn't going to stand by and watch an injustice unfold, not when it involved someone he'd had a positive interaction with. The first thing he did was publicly speak out about what had happened. It wasn't a huge press conference or a scripted statement for the tabloids. No, Brad Pitt took to his personal social media accounts to address the situation. He posted a heartfelt message, and in it, he didn't just sympathize with the waitress, he outright criticized the way she had been treated. He used his platform to shed light on the unfairness of her firing. Imagine that for a second, an A-list celebrity, someone with a fan base of millions, using his personal voice to speak out against a system that had just fired a woman for doing her job. He didn't hold back. He made it clear that he thought the whole thing was wrong. And that, my friend, is where everything took a turn. Brad's post didn't just garner attention, it went viral. It wasn't just fans of his who were supporting him, it was everyday people, workers, and service industry employees who saw this as an opportunity to speak up about the way they, too, are treated in the workplace. People were sharing Brad's message all over social media, and soon the #sign Support the Waitress began trending. It wasn't just another viral moment. This was a full-blown movement starting to take shape. And it all started with Brad Pitt standing up for someone who, in his eyes, had done nothing wrong. But here's the thing. Even though Brad's message was powerful and resonated with so many people, it wasn't enough for him to just post online and move on. This wasn't something he was going to forget. He wanted to make a real difference. So, he took it a step further. Brad Pitt reached out directly to the restaurant management. This wasn't just a casual phone call or an email either. He demanded a meeting, and not just any meeting, a meeting where he could look the people in charge right in the eye and tell them exactly how wrong they were for firing the waitress. He didn't care about the fallout. He didn't care that this was making headlines. All that mattered to him was that the situation was handled with fairness. Now, here's where it gets even crazier. The restaurant management, realizing that they were dealing with a Hollywood heavyweight, suddenly found themselves caught in the middle of a public relations nightmare. They didn't want to be the target of a viral hashtag or Brad Pitt's outrage, especially when it was so widely backed by the public. At first, they tried to brush off his concerns, but the more Brad pushed, the harder it became for them to ignore the growing storm around them. The restaurant's brand, which had long been associated with luxury and exclusivity, was now facing scrutiny. All of a sudden, they were the villain in a story that had captured national attention. It wasn't just about the waitress anymore, it was about their reputation and their treatment of employees, especially under the spotlight of such a high-profile celebrity. As the pressure mounted, the restaurant decided to try and make things right. Sort of. They didn't outright rehire the waitress immediately, but they did issue a public statement. In that statement, they apologized for the way they had handled the situation and promised to investigate further. It wasn't a full admission of guilt, but it was a step in the right direction. Brad Pitt's actions had forced their hand. They had to acknowledge the public backlash and the fact that a celebrity like him was not going to let the situation slide.